Imagine turning from a worthless old man into a powerful hero whom everyone wishes to approach. Did you imagine it, my friend? Alright, let's begin. Our story starts with Ryoma, a miserable employee working in a soul-draining company. The manager constantly overloaded him with tasks, ignored the rest of the employees, and poured all the insults and humiliation on him alone. Yet Ryoma remained silent, never defending himself, and continued to endure this humiliation until he died. But after that, the young man discovered that he had been transported to another world. There, he found 3 mages with strange appearances who didn't seem to be from Earth, and he learned from them that he had died. Why did he die, my friend? Because while he was sleeping, he sneezed 4 powerful sneezes, which caused his brain to rupture, and his blood vessels exploded, leading him to pass away. And of course, when Ryoma found out he had died because of a sneeze, he went insane. He said to himself, "I spent my whole life enduring humiliation and beatings since I was a child. Even my boss at work showed no mercy. One day he even hit me on the head with a bottle. And still, I endured it all, only to die from a sneeze? What a humiliating death." But never mind. He calmed himself afterward, remembering the saying, "Causes may differ, but death is one." After that, he learned from the 3 mages that they would transfer him to a magical world, but he wouldn't go there as Ryoma, the 35-year-old employee. Instead, he would be reincarnated as an 8-year-old boy. And not only that, he would possess great magical power that he could use as he pleased. He also learned from them that there was a rift between the Earth and the world he was going to, and that this new world was called Seal Fall. One of the mages told him, "The world you came from contains a vast amount of magic, but humans are unable to perceive it. A large portion of that magic will be transferred with you to the world of Seal Fall, and you will have incredible power." Then, they made him sign a contract confirming that he agreed to be reincarnated in the form of a child, and the transfer was carried out. Ryoma's body was drawn into the other world, and at that moment, the mages realized that he had arrived and could now do whatever he wished. They told him they would always be watching him, and if he ever wanted to contact them, he only had to go to the church. Without even speaking a word, they would know what he wanted. After that, Ryoma began his new life in Seal Fall. There, he found himself transformed into a young boy, 8 years old, just as they had told him. Beside him was a book containing everything about his powers, since he was not yet used to his new body, his strength, or anything else. He then began testing his physical abilities. He walked to a tree nearby and kicked it with his foot. Instantly, the tree split in half. He was greatly impressed by this. Then, he noticed a slime creature nearby, and his eyes sparkled with stars because he loved such monsters very much. He tried to make the slime reveal its powers, but it didn't respond to him. So, he had to unlock his own magic to find the spell that would allow him to control the creature. But the book was filled with so many spells that he didn't know where to start. He threw all the books aside and did a quick meditation, and then the magic was summoned, and he succeeded in controlling the slime. He walked with it and decided to live in the Jana forest. Naturally, he was very happy because he would now live freely, with no annoying boss to ruin his peace. He also decided to gather as many slimes as possible to live with him and follow all his commands. And indeed, after 3 years, we see Ryoma waking up in his house, located inside a cave in the Jana forest. He was living with 1,000 slimes, each group having a specific form and function. For example, there were slimes that ate larvae and produced extremely strong thread that Ryoma used for hunting. Another type was acidic slime that could melt anything, bones, metal, anything in its way. The poisonous slime only consumed toxic herbs and produced a very potent poison. Another type sterilized anything it came across, as it fed on germs. And the last type loved eating garbage and turned it into agricultural fertilizer. One day, Ryoma went out into the forest to hunt. He knew that he might encounter monsters or ogres, but he was used to facing and defeating them with ease. However, this time, instead of finding an animal to hunt or a monster to fight, he found a group of knights with an injured companion named Hughes, whose wound looked very severe. The healer with them, named Camille, was unable to treat him using magic, and it seemed that the man was on the verge of death before their eyes. When Ryoma saw what had happened, he approached them to try and treat the injured man. However, the knights were afraid of him and raised their swords to stop him, but our hero didn't even flinch. He calmly offered them a potion he had crafted himself and said, "Give him some of this medicine, and I guarantee he'll be fine." His voice was weak, as he hadn't spoken to a human being in 3 years, but the boy quickly regained control of the situation and told them, "Try this medicine. You won't regret it." The healer took the potion from him and tested it, and instantly realized that it was incredibly effective and would certainly help Hughes. Indeed, after Hughes drank it, he fell into a deep sleep. At that point, the knights sheathed their swords and thanked Ryoma for saving their companion. Ryoma then offered to take them to his home so they could rest a little, and naturally, the knights agreed. They carried their sleeping friend and followed Ryoma through the forest toward his home. They were deeply puzzled. How could a child so young live alone in such a place? From his clothing, they could tell he was a hunter, but the situation still felt mysterious. Then, Ryoma suddenly stopped, sensing that a creature was approaching. The knights immediately prepared to fight, but what came toward them wasn't a monster. It was a slime. The knights didn't realize this slime was Ryoma's pet. Seeing their confusion, Ryoma told them, "Lower your weapons. This slime is my friend." They listened to him, sheathed their swords again, and apologized for the misunderstanding. They continued walking through the forest, and during the journey, Rain said to Ryoma that when he was young, he used to live in a house full of slimes. His family had been taming them for generations, in addition to red horses, storm apes, and other rare creatures, all of which were extremely expensive and difficult to obtain. That's when Ryoma realized that Rain came from a very wealthy family. After some time, they reached the mountain, and Ryoma told them, "My house is here." They were stunned and thought to themselves, "Is this boy crazy? Where's the house he's talking about?" Then, Ryoma cast a spell to remove the magical barrier, revealing a house hidden inside the mountain. The knights finally understood. When they entered the house, they laid Hughes on Ryoma's bed and saw for themselves that he lived alone. The furniture consisted only of a table, a chair, and a few items fit for just one person. Thinking back on everything Ryoma had done since they met him in the forest, the knights began to suspect that he might actually be an old man who used magic to disguise himself as a child. Then, Ryoma brought out a box full of bottles containing the magical medicine he had used to treat their friend. He told them that he made this medicine himself. He also served them cold water with ice, which shocked them since ice in that world could only be made through magic. They asked him how he cast such a spell, and he smiled and said, "Ah, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Ryoma, an 11-year-old hunter. It's a pleasure to meet you." One of the knights replied, "It's a pleasure for me as well. I'm Rain, a noble from the Duchy of Jamil." Ryoma bowed to him respectfully and said, "It's a great honor to have a noble like you visit my home." Rain replied, "Come on now. I owe you for saving one of my men." The others began introducing themselves. One said he was a healer. Another said, "I'm a scout, and my name is Zeph." The last one said, "I'm a knight, and my name is Gil. I apologize for pointing my sword at you earlier." Ryoma responded, "Oh, don't worry about it. It happens even in the finest of families." Then Rain explained what had happened. "While we were in the forest, we were attacked by bandits, but we managed to defeat them. After that, we encountered a massive black bear and killed it too, but before it died, it wounded Hughes. As you saw, when the horses saw the bear, they ran off." Rain then asked, "What would make a young boy like you, a hunter with knowledge of magic spells, live in this forest instead of a village? Why are you living alone here? Where are your family and relatives?" Ryoma replied, "The people in the village see me as a strange child, so I don't feel comfortable living there. By the way, I used to live with my grandfather and grandmother, but they passed away 3 years ago. Since then, I've been living here alone." At that point, the healer Camille brought out a magical crystal ball and explained that when someone touches it, it can detect whether they are a criminal or not. If the person is a criminal, the ball glows red. If not, it glows blue. It can also reveal the person's name, age, and combat abilities. Camille asked Ryoma to place his hand on the crystal. Ryoma felt trapped, but he had no choice but to comply to avoid suspicion. He placed his hand on the ball, and it glowed blue. However, Camille seemed surprised by something he saw. Ryoma asked him, "What did you see?" Camille replied, "Oh, nothing. It's just that you don't seem to have any combat skills." Ryoma said, "Don't worry, it's nothing. I'll go prepare dinner for you." He then left the room. Rain asked Camille, "What did you see in the crystal that shocked you like that?" Camille showed him what was written inside, that Ryoma was 11 years old, and that he had the ability to resist both physical and mental pain. Rain then said to his companions, "We can't leave him alone in this forest. I'm going back to the castle to tell my father Elise about Ryoma." Shortly after, Hughes had fully recovered. He thanked Ryoma for everything he had done for him, but when he started to show signs of fatigue again, Ryoma gave him a potion that smelled awful. Hughes refused to drink it, so Camille forced it down his throat. Once the potion took effect, Hughes returned to perfect health, even better than before. He then said to Ryoma, "You saved the life of the Duke's personal bodyguard. I'll never forget this favor. If you ever come to Joanna, you must visit me there." After that, they all said goodbye and left. A week later, Ryoma was surprised when the healer returned to his home, and this time, he was accompanied by a girl as beautiful as the moon, and she was the same age as Ryoma. At the beginning, everyone started introducing themselves. The first was the elderly man, Jamil, who turned out to be Rain's father, and also the former Duke of the kingdom. Then Elise, Rain's wife, introduced herself and thanked Ryoma for what he had done for her husband and his knights. Ryoma replied politely, "I only did what anyone should." At that moment, Rain introduced his daughter, Elia. Ryoma's face turned red with embarrassment, as it was the first time he had ever seen a girl his age. Not knowing how to escape the awkward situation, he said, "I would have liked to host you properly, but my house is humble and may not be fitting." Jamil laughed and replied, "Don't say that. It's more than enough that we came without even giving you notice." Then Jamil noticed the slime surrounding Ryoma and said in amazement, "What in the world? I've never seen this many slimes before. How did you manage to tame them all?" Rain, also surprised, asked, "Have their numbers increased since the last time?" Ryoma responded, "Yes, they've multiplied. Each one has split into two." Elia then asked, "Do they know their way to your home?" Ryoma replied, "Yes, I've trained them to memorize the route." Then Ryoma gave the slimes a command to expand. All the slimes gathered together and transformed into a single giant slime. Elia gasped and asked, "How did you do that?" Ryoma explained, "I can merge more than 100 slimes of the same type into one large slime, like what you're seeing now. It helps them enter the house quickly. Once inside, I return them to their normal size so the house can accommodate them." Everyone was astonished by Ryoma's skill in slime taming. Elise couldn't believe what she saw. She approached Ryoma and said, "How can you talk as if what you do is normal? You're a brilliant tamer and hunter. There's no one like you. That's why you must register your name with the Tamers Guild and share this genius discovery of yours." Ryoma replied, "I'll think about it later." Then he gave the slimes the command to return to their original size, and they did. Everyone then entered the house. At that moment, Rain presented Ryoma with a gift, a golden pocket watch, and said, "I noticed your home doesn't have a clock. Thought I'd bring you one that might be useful." Ryoma gratefully accepted the gift and thanked him with a smile. Then Elia said, "By the way, we didn't come just to bring you a watch. I come from one of the greatest tamer families in the kingdom, and I want to capture my first slime by myself, without help. Since you're an expert in slime taming, I'd like you to suggest the best place where slimes gather, so I can catch my very first one." Ryoma pointed to a small lake on a hand-drawn map of the forest and said, "Slimes usually gather here to drink. If you go to that spot, you'll definitely be able to catch one." Elia replied, "Now I know the place, but I still haven't decided what kind of slime I want as my first pet. What do you recommend? I've never seen that white slime of yours before. What is it exactly?" Ryoma said, "Those brown slimes you see eat trash and waste. They remove anything with a bad smell and turn it into compost, which I use for farming." Elia began writing down everything Ryoma said so she wouldn't forget. She told him this was the first time she had ever heard of this slime type. Then Ryoma picked up a white slime and said, "This one is called a cleaning slime. It can clean and disinfect anything." He pulled out a cloth and told her, "This cloth was from a fight I had with a goblin in the forest. I defeated it." He then handed the cloth to the slime, and within moments, the slime cleaned it until it looked brand new, better than any washing machine in the world. To prove that cleaning slimes don't eat flesh unless ordered to, Ryoma dipped his hand inside it and nothing happened. With excitement, Elia said, "I've decided. My first slime will be this cute white cleaning slime, and I want you to teach me how to catch one." Ryoma's face turned red again and he said, "I can't teach a girl like you how to catch a slime." It was clear he was shy and reluctant, but all the men in the house gathered around him. When he explained how to catch a cleaning slime, their faces also turned red, except for Hughes, who said, "Leave this mission to us, gentlemen." Then he turned to Elia and the other women and said, "It's really simple. Cleaning slimes love bath water. All you have to do, Elia, is take a bath, collect the used water, go to the lake, and pour it there. The cleaning slime will come straight to you and you'll be able to tame it." At that moment, Hughes received a strong punch to the face, but Elia followed his instructions, went out, and successfully caught her first slime. By the end of the day, she returned holding her new slime with a bright smile. Everyone congratulated her on the achievement. That's when Ryoma recalled the day he caught his very first slime. He remembered how happy he was with it, so much so that he named it Tabut, after his dearest friend. Then Elise asked Ryoma, "What do you plan to do next?" He answered, "I haven't decided yet. I might keep living here in the forest, or maybe I'll travel to another city. Depends on my mood." Rain said to him, "How about joining us on our journey to the city? And if you ever wish to return here, you can do so whenever you like." Noticing Ryoma's hesitation, Elia said, "By the way, this is my first journey too. I was very scared, and I still am. But because I agreed to join this trip, I've been through many adventures. I've learned a lot, and there's still so much more to learn. I'm sure we'll come across many things on the road that will teach us even more." Convinced by her words, Ryoma replied, "Well then, if that's the case, I'll go with you." Rain smiled and said, "Gather all your belongings and give them to Sebas, my steward. He'll store them in the magic chest. But Ryoma chuckled and replied, "Come now, Duke. Have you forgotten I'm a magician? I'll store my things myself." Rain was surprised. How is that possible? No magician can use a magic chest unless he's grown older, studied all forms of magic, and reached a high level. At that moment, Elisa's eyes lit up with excitement. "If you want to learn any new spells," she said to Ryoma, "just tell me, and I'll share all my magical knowledge with you." Before Ryoma could answer, Elia added eagerly, "Say yes, we'll learn together." He smiled and said, "If we're learning together, then of course I'll accept." He then left to gather his belongings, placing everything neatly into his own magical chest until the house was completely emptied. After that, they all stepped outside, and Ryoma sealed the house using the protection barrier spell. Sebas summoned 2 large magical carriages pulled by horses. They split into 2 groups, Ryoma, Elia, her mother and father, along with Sebas in one carriage, while Rain and the others rode in the second. As the journey began, Elia turned to Ryoma and asked, "Tell me, Prince, can you really control the elements of fire, water, earth, and air?" Ryoma answered calmly, "Of course, my grandmother taught me all types of magic." Rain was shocked. "You mean you can use barrier magic, taming magic, and all 4 elemental types? That's insane. People like you are extremely rare and hold high status among magicians." Ryoma responded, "And what would you say if I told you I also practice healing magic and alchemy?" Jamil immediately warned him, "Alchemy? That's an incredibly rare form of magic. Only a handful of mages can use it, and most who do are dark mages. Don't let its power tempt you into doing something reckless." Ryoma replied confidently, "Don't worry, Grandpa. I'm not like them. Honestly, I didn't even know alchemy was that rare. And in any case, I only use it for beneficial purposes." Then Ryoma thought to himself, "These people are strange. Every time I mention something I can do, they act like it's some kind of miracle. I hope things don't get weirder from here." Things went smoothly until rain began to fall. Sebas pulled a blanket from his magical chest and handed it to Elise. Suddenly, the carriage came to a stop. Ryoma stepped outside, wearing a magical cloak he had crafted himself, using a special substance secreted by toxic slimes, which made the cloak waterproof. As he inspected the situation, Jamil whispered to his wife, "Imagine how much Ryoma could make if he sold that cloak to Sergei, the merchant who owns Morgan Trading Company." Meanwhile, Ryoma found the knights in disarray. A section of the mountain had collapsed, completely blocking the path. Ryoma stepped forward and said confidently, "Leave this to me." First, he cast a protection spell over everyone to shield them from the rain. Then, he used a powerful spell to lift the massive rocks blocking the road. It took the entire night, but when he finished, everyone thanked him sincerely. They continued their journey, and after 3 days, they arrived at the city of Jamiel. There, they checked into a hotel. As Ryoma entered his room and opened the window, he looked out onto the city's main street. We learned then that the city is well known for its mines, where laborers extract various minerals. However, production in recent times had declined significantly. That's why the Duke had come, to assess which mines would remain operational and which would be shut down. Since Ryoma didn't have an identification card, the Duke and his family took him to the church to receive what's known as a status element, similar to a personal ID. Upon arriving at the church, the clerk told him, "Take this item, place it in front of the crystal, and touch the crystal." Ryoma did as instructed. Suddenly he was transported to the place where he had once met the 3 mages who had sent him to the world of Salfel. Seeing them, he panicked. "What's going on? Did I die again?" They laughed and replied, "No, you're not dead. We just missed you and thought we'd check in." Then they added, "We're really impressed with your progress in this world, especially your house in the forest. But the best part? The bathroom is always spotless." Ryoma chuckled. "Well, I can't take credit for that. All thanks goes to the cleaning slime." They then revealed a surprising truth. There never was a cleaning slime, or even a garbage-eating slime. You created those species yourself, evolving them from other slime types. But that wasn't the only surprise. Ryoma learned that many other humans had been transported to the world of Salfel, some of whom had become members of noble families. For example, there was a woman highly skilled in magic who established a school for training in spellcasting and monster taming. She eventually met one of the Duke's ancestors, fell in love, and married him. That's how Elia inherited her magical abilities from her earthborn grandmother. Ryoma was overwhelmed with joy to discover that Elia also had roots in the earthly world. When one of the mages saw the joy in Ryoma's eyes, he thought to himself, "Let me ruin this moment for him a little." Then suddenly threw him a remark saying, "There was another person before you who was transported from Earth to our world, but he used the magical power we granted him for evil. However, he eventually managed to control himself and return to the path of good magic." Then the mage added, addressing Ryoma, "Be very careful. The magical energy you possess will attract leaders from both the good and evil realms of magic. Stay vigilant." Ryoma confidently replied, "Don't worry about me. I'll know how to keep them in check." After that, Ryoma returned once more to the world of self-fill, received his status element card from the clerk, then headed to meet the Duke and his family, who had learned that he had completed the registration process. At that moment, Jamil jokingly said to him, "Now that you've become a fully equipped young man, I'd like to offer you some useful advice about the city." Ryoma smiled and replied, "Please do, Grandpa. We always learn from your experience." Jamil spoke in a serious tone. "You must be cautious. Your magical abilities far surpass those of other children your age, and this could lead many criminals to target you, either to learn magic from you or to exploit your powers for their own purposes. That's why you should avoid showing your abilities in front of ordinary people and refrain from attracting attention. I know it's difficult, but you must try. Better yet, you should register with one of the magic guilds." At that moment, Ryoma noticed that the young girl wanted to say something but was hesitant, so he said, "What's wrong? It seems like you want to ask me something but are too shy to say it." She replied timidly, "It's nothing. I just wanted to know, how much magical power do you have?" He answered, 198,000. She was astonished and said, "Can you really control all that power? We have many mages with far less magical energy than that, yet they still can't control their abilities." He asked her, "And you? How much magical power do you have?" She responded, 2,000, and still, I can't control it. He gently said, "That's all right. It's simple. Practice using it again and again, and you'll gradually gain control." She was impressed by the idea and asked, "Where did you get that idea from?" He replied playfully, "That's the difference in abilities, my dear." After that, they went to the Magic Guild, but the guild refused to accept Ryoma, as joining required summoning and controlling a magical beast. Ryoma, however, always had his beasts with him and never needed to summon them. So the Duke and his companions took him to the Adventurers Guild, where the guild master himself conducted Ryoma's test. The first test involved hitting stationary targets with arrows, and Ryoma succeeded with a single hit for each target. The guild master said, "Excellent. Now let's make it harder with moving targets." But that didn't faze Ryoma, as he struck every moving target with incredible precision. Then came the final test, where the master threw a dagger at him to test his reaction. Ryoma not only caught the dagger with his hand, but also threw it back at the master using a magical spell to summon a weapon and attacked him with it. The master laughed and said, "I was just testing you, kid. You passed with flying colors, all 3 tests." Afterward, the guild master handed him the Adventurers Guild membership card, categorizing him as a G-rank adventurer, the lowest rank. He said, "I'll have you start from the bottom of the ladder, so the other adventurers won't grow envious of you." Ryoma replied, "All right, no problem." Ryoma received his first mission, which was to clean houses and bathrooms. The next day, he went to his first assignment. When he knocked on the door, a well-groomed cat opened it. Her name was Maya, and she belonged to a race known as the Beastkin. This was Ryoma's first time seeing a cat. As soon as the door opened, a foul odor wafted from inside, making it hard for Ryoma to breathe, unlike the trash slimes, who leaped into the box, eager to devour the garbage scattered everywhere. Ryoma then discovered that Maya's house was next to the waste area, and the shared wall had partially collapsed, allowing the trash to invade her home. No one had agreed to clean her house because of how much filth had accumulated, and she had lost all hope that someone would help her. So when Ryoma told her he would clean it, she couldn't believe it, and burst into tears of joy. Then Ryoma opened the slime box and said, "Let's get to work." They started with the dump site, where the slimes consumed all the garbage. Then Ryoma used the water control spell and thoroughly washed the place. After that, they moved to Maya's home. The trash slimes repeated their task with dedication. A gap in the damaged wall became visible. Ryoma called on the sticky slime to assist him, then used the stone spell to realign and attach the stones. After finishing the repair, he disinfected the area and finally handed Maya back her home, now clean and restored. She wept again from happiness, unable to believe her house was back to normal, and thanked Ryoma deeply. Ryoma jokingly said, "No need to thank me, my little cat. Just doing my job." Then, he had her sign the mission completion form, which she did with joy. The news of his excellent work reached the Adventurers Guild, and they decided to reward him with a large bonus. When he returned to the guild, the receptionist couldn't believe he had completed Maya's house in such a short time. She handed him a bag full of money. He asked in surprise, "What is all this? That's a huge amount." She replied, "It was Maya. She asked us to double your pay." After that, the guild master called him in for something important. When they sat down, Ryoma said, "I know what it is. Cleaning the public restrooms, right?" The master laughed and said, "Exactly. But be careful. This is a task requested directly by the government." He explained that the government used to pay poor villagers wages to clean public toilets, but the minister ordered the budget cut due to a national crisis, as the mines were no longer operating as before. Ryoma said, "I know that. But what happened to the villagers is unjust. I don't think the Duke would ever approve of such a thing. I'll report it to him myself." When he returned to the palace, he informed them of what had happened. The Duke grew furious and said, "How could this happen? There must be theft going on inside the ministry. I never stopped paying the wages of the villagers who clean the public toilets. The full payments are still being issued. An immediate investigation must be launched so we can catch that corrupt minister." He then asked Ryoma to temporarily take on the task of cleaning the public toilets until the issue could be resolved. Ryoma agreed, of course. Afterward, the young man went to the public restroom area, and as soon as he opened the door to the first bathroom, he was struck by a horrible stench. He and the slimes immediately began cleaning. Since the slimes consumed a large amount of waste, each one split into two, which helped Ryoma complete the job much faster. However, Ryoma was shocked to discover the presence of toxic gases inside the public toilets. He quickly reported this to the Duke and his family. They were all deeply worried about him, but he reassured them, saying, "My body is immune to all kinds of poisons, so there's no danger to me. But if the villagers come near these toilets, they could die just from inhaling the fumes. That's why we need guards to protect the area during the cleaning process." The Duke then assigned a group of adventurers to accompany Ryoma and guard the restrooms during his work. The next day, the adventurers went with Ryoma, and while he was working, Elise arrived with the servants carrying food and juice for him. The adventurers didn't let them enter the restrooms, so they asked the servants to deliver the food to Ryoma, and everyone agreed. In the evening, Ryoma stepped out to take a short break, ate his meal, and drank some juice. In the morning, when the adventurers asked him to take a proper rest, he replied, "I won't rest until I finish the job." He returned inside to continue the cleaning, and the adventurers were amazed by his courage and strength. After some time, Ryoma completed the cleaning of all the public toilets. When he exited the last restroom, Maya greeted him and said, "Well done, hero." Then, the young man went to the Adventurers Guild and said to the guildmaster, "I've finished cleaning all 30 toilets." The guildmaster replied with admiration, "Well done, adventurer. Expect a great reward from us. Now go home and get some well-deserved rest." The following morning, as Ryoma was leaving the Adventurers Guild, he remembered his days back on Earth, when he used to work late into the night, only to return home in the morning and find his mother waiting for him. At that time, he felt that someone truly cared about him and about his life. But after his mother passed away, he returned to an empty home, and though it saddened him at first, he gradually grew used to being alone, used to having no one in the world. But this time, when he returned to the Duke's palace, he found the Duke and his entire family waiting for him, eager to make sure he was all right. Ryoma couldn't hold back his emotions and began crying out of pure joy. He said to them, "It's been so long since I last felt like I had a family that cared about me. I don't know how to thank you." Elise approached him gently and said, "From this day on, you do have a family that loves you and worries about you. Don't worry about anything. We're here for you. Everything is going to be just fine." The next morning, Elia woke up early and began preparing breakfast for Ryoma, with help from her mother and the servants. When Ryoma saw the royal-style breakfast, he asked, "Did you prepare this yourself?" Hughes joked, "Don't let it get to your head. It's just a little bribe, so you'll agree to what she's about to ask." Ryoma laughed and replied, "You don't need a bribe. You only have to ask." Elia said, "I was sure that the eggs I made for breakfast would win you over and get you to agree." Hughes added, "Indeed, your cooking is simply irresistible." Pretending not to hear him, Elia said, "Ryoma, I want you to teach me magic today." He answered, "With pleasure." After breakfast, they all went to a place near the forest, and Ryoma began teaching her how to control dark magic, water, and wind. At first it was difficult for her, but eventually she managed to wield the magic just like he did. Then the healer turned to Ryoma and asked, "Tell me, how do you use magic in combat?" Ryoma replied, "I'm not very skilled in that area." The healer then wanted to demonstrate, so he cast a flame arrow spell and shot it at a nearby mountain, breaking off a piece of it. Ryoma then used his own flame arrow and shattered a much larger portion of the mountain. The healer laughed in surprise and said, all right, you've surpassed me. Come on, let me teach you more." He then began showing Ryoma how to use water, wind, fire, and ice magic all at once in battle. And as expected, the student quickly outshone his teacher. Then, Siba stepped forward and said, "Now it's my turn. I'm going to teach you spatial magic." He continued, "Spatial magic, my friend, allows a magician to teleport from one place to another in less than a second." Ryoma replied, "Oh, come on!" And suddenly, he vanished from where he stood and reappeared in a nearby spot with incredible speed. Sebas said in amazement, "Excellent! Now I want you to teleport all the way to that distant mountain." Ryoma asked, "How do I do that?" Sebas replied, "It's simple. Just focus on the exact point you want to move to. It's easier than you think." Ryoma followed the instructions and successfully teleported to the top of the mountain in seconds. At that same moment, Sebas appeared beside him and said, Well done, hero. You learned that incredibly fast. Now I'll teach you how to use spatial magic to teleport living beings from one place to another. At that moment, Sebas used spatial magic to open a portal capable of transferring living beings from one place to another. He then began teaching Ryoma how to open such a portal himself. Ryoma kept trying over and over until he finally succeeded, and he felt overwhelming joy. This spatial rift would allow him to transport slimes from place to place without having to pack them into boxes and carry them on his back. The next day, Ryoma had a monster combat lesson. He headed to the entrance of a well-known mine along with Elia and the knights to begin the training. Elia appeared slightly nervous, as it was her first time fighting real monsters. The Duke and her grandfather encouraged and reassured her. They all entered the mine, and after walking a short distance inside, one of the scouting knights said, "Wait, there's a monster nearby." Everyone stopped, and suddenly, a mantis monster appeared. The scout explained that this creature was especially dangerous because it was never alone. There were usually at least 30 more of its kind nearby within the mine, but Elia gathered her courage and said firmly, "Leave this one to me!" She launched a fire arrow at it, but it had no effect. She then fired another arrow directly at its head, and this time she struck it down. Everyone praised her bravery. Soon, more monsters appeared, and Ryoma eliminated them all with a single strike. His garbage slimes then devoured the fallen monster's remains. At that moment, Elia spotted a metallic slime. She trapped it using an ice spell, then gifted it to Ryoma as a token of gratitude for teaching her how to control magic through fun and games. When they exited the mine, the Duke and grandfather congratulated Elia on catching her first monster. Meanwhile, Ryoma noticed a red shimmer in the sand near the mine's entrance. Using alchemy magic, he extracted metal from the sand, revealing a stunning iron ingot. Everyone around him was impressed. They summoned the merchant, Sergei, to inspect it. Upon seeing the ingot, Sergei gasped in amazement. "My goodness, I've never seen an ingot this beautiful before. The one who made this must be an extremely skilled alchemist." Jamil responded with a smile. "Indeed, it was Ryoma, the young man standing right in front of you." Sergei said, "I'd like to buy it." "Name your price," Jamil replied warmly. "We agree to sell it, and all proceeds will go to Ryoma. We don't need the money." Ryoma could hardly believe it. He was overjoyed. Then the Duke turned to Sergei and warned, "Don't tell anyone that the alchemist who crafted this ingot is an 11-year-old boy. Someone might try to kidnap him." Sergei nodded quickly and said, "You have my word." The next day, Ryoma attended a meeting with the head of the Adventurers Guild and several members. The guildmaster informed them that all individuals who had stolen from the national treasury had been fired and arrested. He then explained their next mission, to track and eliminate the monsters within the northern mine. He reassured them that the creatures were relatively small, but warned there might be unexpected threats inside, so they should remain alert. Before heading out, Ryoma brought poison and acid close to the metallic slime to test its reactions. The slime was visibly terrified. Being made of metal, it was especially vulnerable to acid and toxins. Ryoma gently picked it up and comforted it, later playing ball with Elia using the slime as a toy. Then they heard the adventurers calling Ryoma for the monster hunt. He joined them and headed to the mine, where they were greeted by the guildmaster and his secretary. The secretary said, "The monsters you're likely to encounter inside are either mantises, bats, or rats." The guildmaster added, "These are simple beasts and can be defeated easily, but beware, they usually appear in groups. Still, I'm confident that as brave adventurers, you'll succeed." The group ventured into the mine. After a short walk, one of the adventurers turned to Ryoma jokingly and said, "You've been promoted to rank F in just 2 days." Ryoma laughed and replied, "Do you think cleaning 30 toilets was easy? That nearly broke me." The adventurer replied, "Then go slay some monsters too. You might get another promotion." Just then, the cat-eared adventurer interrupted and asked Ryoma, "By the way, how many slimes do you have under your control?" Ryoma replied calmly, "Not that many, just 4,310. The cat girl was shocked. "How in the world do you control that many?" He answered confidently, "It's simple. I've gotten used to handling all of them." Another adventurer asked, "Can you actually fight?" Ryoma grinned and said, "Of course. I fight with bows, arrows, daggers, my fists, and all kinds of magic spells. There's nothing I can't handle." The girl chuckled and said, "Nice. Looks like we'll be relying on you a lot, especially for the offense. None of us are really good at it." He smiled and replied, "Just say the word. I'm ready." Suddenly, more mantis monsters appeared, but the adventurers quickly defeated them. Then they discovered a large swarm of bats within the mine. Ryoma stepped forward and said, "I'll take care of this. I'll use a sound bomb spell, but first, I'll cast a sound barrier to protect everyone." After making sure everyone was shielded, he cast a small barrier on himself and then detonated the sound bomb. The explosion instantly eliminated all the bats. Ryoma then ordered the sticky slimes to devour the corpses. As they exited the mine, the guildmaster was waiting for them and said, "Goblin monsters creatures have attacked the miners. The secretary showed them an image of the creatures and explained, the goblin village is located inside the mine. There are over 500 of them. You'll need to eliminate them all. The adventurers formed a strategy. 2 of them entered the goblin village to provoke the monsters and lure them outside. As expected, the goblins chased after them and fell into a pit Ryoma had filled with acid slime. Many were killed on the spot, but due to their massive size, not all of their bodies dissolved completely. The rest of the goblins climbed over the corpses of their fallen comrades and launched a counterattack. The adventurers held their ground. The guildmaster himself joined the fierce battle against the goblins, and many were taken down with swords and spells. But they soon realized the enemy count was far greater than 500. Meanwhile, the healing slimes were assisting the injured miners. More goblins began to emerge. Ryoma declared, there's no other way now. He used spatial magic to summon a large number of slimes into the mine and ordered them to attack the goblins. The adventurers fought alongside them, cutting down more monsters. Finally, Ryoma decided to use the sound bomb again. He cast sound barriers to protect everyone, shielded himself, and unleashed the bomb. The explosion paralyzed the goblins, making it easy for the slimes to finish them off completely. And then, my friend, the Goblin King appeared, coming to wipe them all out. But do you think Ryoma would just stand by and do nothing? Never. He immediately commanded all the slimes to attack, and sure enough, they managed to bring him down. With that, Ryoma, the slimes, and the adventurers had successfully defeated 2,000 goblins in total. After the battle, Ryoma asked the cleaning slimes to clean the adventurers and their clothes, which were almost discarded due to how filthy they had become. At that moment, Maya said to him, Ryoma, if you opened a laundry shop, you'd become a millionaire for sure. The idea resonated with Ryoma. When they exited the cave, the villagers thanked Ryoma, as the healing slime had saved the workers who had been attacked by the goblins, and everything returned to normal. After the adventurers returned to the Duke's mansion, Ryoma had already made up his mind to leave and become independent. He met with the Duke and his family, told them everything that happened during the mission, and thanked them for all they had done for him. Then he said, I've decided to part ways with you and live independently. Eliaya was visibly moved and asked, why do you want to leave us? Did someone upset you? He replied, no, not at all, but I've come to rely on you for everything. I feel like a spoiled child. That's why I want to stand on my own. The Duke responded, we knew this day would come. We were just waiting for you to take this step. Eliaya added, I never imagined Ryoma would ever leave us. Her mother said to her, just as you're leaving to attend the Magic Academy and learn on your own, he too must take this journey for himself. Then the grandfather said with a smile, we agree to let you go, but on one condition. You must write us a letter every day to let us know how you're doing. The Duke added, and you must come visit us from time to time so we can see you again. Elise said, don't ever hesitate to ask us for help, no matter what. Also, you must continue living in this inn. It's ours, and your stay will always be free. Then Eliaya said, I have 2 conditions. First, we must meet again after 3 years. That's when I'll have my first break from the academy. Second, we must meet again after 6 years, once I graduate. And if you forget those 2 dates, I'll make you regret it. He smiled and replied, all right, I won't forget. Then he asked them, are you leaving the city too? They replied, yes, we'll be leaving once the grill frog season begins. He asked, aren't those the frogs whose skins are used to make weapons? The Duke said, exactly, and their organs are used for medicine as well. Eliaya added, during that season a rare bird called the lemur appears. It's an incredibly beautiful creature with a lovely voice, but it's extremely difficult to catch because of its speed. Ryoma said, I'd really like to see that bird. Elise told him, if you want to see it, you'll have to come with us. He replied, you can count on it. Then Ryoma told them that he planned to open a laundry business. He'd noticed how adventurers always threw away their clothes after fighting ghouls, as the stench was impossible to remove. At that moment, the maids entered the room and said, you'll earn a fortune from this project. You're cleaning slimes clean clothes like magic. The Duke said, tomorrow, I'll arrange a meeting with the merchant Serge so you can present your idea to him and hear what he thinks. The next day, they went to see Serge. When he saw how clean the clothes were thanks to the slime, he said in amazement, this is incredible, Ryoma. I'm totally on board with your idea, and I'll support you. But first, you need to register with the Merchants Guild, so the big merchants don't trouble you. And so they all went to the guild, where they met the guild master. She agreed to enroll Ryoma, gave him his membership card, and also offered to sell him a great property to use for his laundry business. The next day, Ryoma went with Serge and Eliaya to check out the location. Serge told him, this place used to be a grand hotel, but it burned down. Ever since, no one's been interested in buying it. Ryoma looked at the map and said, this location is perfect. It's near a residential area and the Adventurers Guild. I'll take it. Serge laughed and said, "Great, I'll bring the workers tomorrow to start renovations. And don't forget my commission, boss." The following day, Ryoma began preparing the place with his slimes. Even the knights helped, laying tiles and cleaning up the storefront. When Eliaya told him, "Take a break, it's been a while since you've rested," he replied, "This is nothing compared to the exhaustion from my old job." He was referring to his work at the programming company in his previous world. She asked, "What exactly did you do?" He said, "A lot of things. I made little dolls and sold them, moved goods between shops, stuff like that." She said in surprise, "Really? You used to make dolls? I want one." He smiled and said, "All right, I'll make you one." Once everything was ready, Ryoma told Hughes that he'd hold a grand opening party for the laundry shop, with food and drinks for everyone. Hughes said jokingly, "I'm definitely in. There's food involved." Ryoma then left and headed to the temple, where he was transported to the other world. Upon his arrival, one of the sorcerers said to him, "Be careful. You can no longer hide your emotions like a child. That's dangerous. You must be cautious from here on." Ryoma understood the warning and said, "I will." Then, he returned once again to the world of Sealfall. The next day, Ryoma visited the Duke's family and invited them to the grand opening of his laundromat. He had prepared a banner that read, "Wash your clothes twice and get the third wash for free." He then invited everyone who had helped and supported him, including the adventurers, the merchant, the head of the Adventurers Guild, the head of the Merchants Guild, the knights, and nearly everyone he knew. On the following day, Serge arrived with the twins, Carla and Callum, the two employees he had promised Ryoma to help him run the laundromat. On the way, Serge warned them, saying, "Be careful. Though the owner of the laundromat is only 11 years old, he is close to the Duke's family. So, if you make any mistake with him, the consequences will be dire for all of us." At that same moment, Ryoma was with Elia and Arone, preparing food and drinks for the guests. Once they finished, Serge arrived with the new employees. Ryoma welcomed them warmly, and when Serge introduced them, he said, "These twins worked with me at one of my company's branches. Carla was the branch manager, and Callum served as her deputy." Ryoma greeted them and introduced himself, then began explaining how the laundromat operated. He showed them the bags customers would purchase to put their laundry in, then pointed to a special window where the laundry would be thrown down to the room below, where the cleaning slimes resided. He took them there and demonstrated how the slimes washed the clothes. Afterward, the metal slime would receive the garments and iron them, followed by the adhesive slime, which arranged them neatly in their designated places. Everything was meticulously organized. He then took them upstairs and informed them that the upper floor was restricted to staff only. He showed them the manager's office, the guest reception room, the kitchen, and all the essential facilities. Afterward, he guided them to the workers' quarters and told them, "You may choose any 2 rooms, as you are currently the only employees." As the guests began to arrive, the staff started serving the food and drinks, and everyone was cheerful and delighted. Ryoma approached the Duke and said, "Of course, this food isn't as luxurious as what you're used to at your banquets, but it's the best we could offer." The Duke laughed and replied, "Don't remind me. Banquet food always upsets my stomach. Your food here is perfect for me." When the party ended, the servants and staff began tidying and cleaning the laundromat. During this time, Carla and her brother spoke to Ryoma in a formal manner, which he didn't like. He said, "Do you think I'm related to the Duke or something?" Carla answered, "Yes." He smiled and replied, "I'm not. You can treat me casually. And by the way, if you're not happy with the job, you're free to leave. I won't be upset." But the twins responded in unison, "We want to work with you." Carla added, "When we heard you were only 11, we thought you were just a child who couldn't manage a business. But seeing you here, we realized you are truly capable, and it would be an honor to work with you, boss." The next day, Ryoma wasn't feeling very optimistic. He told the employees, "I know we won't get many customers at first, so I'll go to the Adventurers Guild while you take care of the laundromat." When he arrived at the guild, he found that his friends had created a poster advertising the laundromat and hung it on the wall for everyone to see. He thanked them sincerely, then selected a new cleaning mission. After completing his mission and returning to the laundromat, he was surprised to see an overwhelming number of customers, so many that they blocked the entrance. He used his spatial movement skill to enter and help the employees with their tasks. By the end of the day, everyone was exhausted, and Ryoma thanked them, saying, "I'll hire more staff so the workload is divided, and you can all get more rest." He went to the Merchants Guild and asked the head to send him more employees, as the project was succeeding and the workload was increasing. She replied, "Consider it done. Just tell me what you need." He then visited the Duke and told him everything that had happened. The Duke advised him to visit the royal guards, as they constantly needed their clothes and armor cleaned. Working with them would provide a stable income. Ryoma promised to visit them soon. The Duke then noticed signs of fatigue on Ryoma and said, "You seem exhausted. You should rest so you can continue your work tomorrow." Indeed, Ryoma went to his room, and despite his exhaustion, he felt immense joy. His project had succeeded, and he was surrounded by people who cared for him. The next day, even more customers came. When one lady noticed that her clothes looked clean and brand new, she thanked the employees and said, "I'll wash my clothes here every day." Everyone in the laundromat heard her and was overjoyed, knowing they had finally found a reliable place to clean their garments efficiently. Once Ryoma was assured that everything was running smoothly, he returned to the Merchants Guild. There, the head had already gathered a group of job applicants for him. Upon seeing him, they began whispering, thinking he was the head's grandson or a relative. Ryoma smiled and said, "I'm the owner of the laundromat, and I'm 11 years old. I've come to choose who among you is fit to work with us." He explained that the job did not require much physical effort, so women could apply as well. However, he warned them that those who feared monsters could not work there, as they would have to interact with slimes. Most of them grew scared and left, except for a man and a young girl, who seemed to be strangers to the city. Ryoma noticed that the man's cane concealed a sword, and the girl's hair clip was also a weapon. However, he pretended not to notice and asked them what conditions they had for accepting the job. The man replied, "My name is Fai, and this is my daughter Ling. She doesn't resemble me because she inherited her beauty from her mother." He then showed Ryoma his broken leg and added, "Even so, I can still work." Ryoma replied, "Don't worry, it's a simple matter. I have a healing slime that can easily treat your leg." They then spoke about housing, and the man explained that they were poor and couldn't afford to rent an apartment. Ryoma told them, "That's solved too. I have lodging available for workers and staff." He then asked, "What's the story behind the weapons you're carrying?" They were surprised he had figured them out. Fai said, "I didn't expect you to be so perceptive. Since you know, I'll tell you the truth. We used to be hired assassins, but we left that life after our leader died. We managed to escape from our country before the regime there could kill us, and we arrived here with nothing. No money, no possessions." Ryoma turned to the head of the guild and asked, "Did you know they were former assassins?" She replied, "Yes, but don't worry. They're good people, and I vouch for them with my life." Ryoma then said to them, "I wish to benefit from your experience, and would like to appoint you as guards for the laundry." The employees immediately agreed, and he took them there. Upon arrival, they were surprised to find the laundry packed with customers. Ling said in astonishment, "Are you sure you just opened 2 days ago? The place is full of people. This is really encouraging." He laughed and said, "It's Thursday today. Don't jinx it, my lady." Then Ryoma introduced them to the staff, turned to Faye, and said, "You'll be in charge of receiving customers." Faye approached the cashier with a smile. Ryoma then said to Ling, "Enter the slime room and receive the clean clothes from them." Without saying a word, she went into the slime room. When she saw how they worked, she was deeply impressed and started taking the clean clothes from them and handing them to Carla. At the end of the day, Ryoma thanked everyone and asked Carla to prepare the account summary. He then took Faye and his daughter to the second floor, where he asked one of his slimes to heal Faye's broken leg. Faye could hardly believe he could stand again and thanked Ryoma sincerely. After that, Ryoma showed them the rooms they would stay in, and they were very impressed by how clean and beautiful they were. When they returned to Carla and her brother, Carla handed the account sheet to Ryoma. He said, "We earned more today than we did in the past 2 days combined." She replied, "You should invest in this success and open a new branch in another city." He said, "It's still too early for that. It's only been 2 days since we opened." Then Ryoma told them that Faye and his daughter had military backgrounds, and for that reason, they would be working in security. The next day, Ryoma met with Elia and told her everything that had happened, that the project had succeeded, and that he had hired new staff to help him. She said, "Now I'm relieved. I've been busy learning new types of magic and couldn't assist you." Ryoma thanked her and returned to the laundry, which, as usual, was full of customers. He decided to reward the employees by baking pizza for them himself. He prepared the food, and at the end of the day, they all sat together and ate. The food was delicious, and everyone loved it. The next day, Ryoma told the employees, "I'll be hiring more staff soon, and I'll make sure to provide meals and improve the workflow. If only all managers were like Ryoma, life would be perfect." Then Ryoma returned to the Merchants Guild and asked the manager to send new employees, including a cook. She brought him 3 women and said, "These 3 are from the same village. They came to Gimwell City looking for work." The cook introduced herself and said, "My name is Celia. I used to work as a chef in major hotels, and I'd like to work with you." Ryoma agreed and hired her along with the other 3 girls. Passed since the laundry opened, and things started going even better. Sales increased significantly. The staff were comfortable in their work, and when the Duke's family saw the line of customers waiting outside, they were delighted. The Duke said, "I knew he'd succeed, but not this quickly. This puts us at ease, knowing we can leave him in the city on his own." The next day, Sergei met Ryoma and asked, "How's work going?" Ryoma replied, "Everything is great. The employees you recommended are doing an excellent job. I've hired more, and my profits are increasing every day." Sergei said, "What if I told you we could increase your profits even more?" Ryoma asked, surprised, "How would that happen?" Sergei replied, "You already supply our company with metal ingots and sticky slime threads that adventurers use. Now we want you to also supply us with waterproof fabric. As you know, the frog hunting season is near, and adventurers will be heading to the swamps. They'll need waterproof cloth, he continued. We need large quantities. You'll profit, and so will the company. Ryoma said, all right then, deal. That same night, Aaliyah was with Ryoma and learned that he was producing the waterproof fabric in an abandoned cave. She said, I'll come with you tomorrow. The next day, Ryoma was working in the cave, and the sticky slime was doing the job. Aaliyah said, I came with you today to practice the violin. Ryoma was surprised and said, I didn't know you played music. She replied, the birds I want to tame communicate through melodies, so I'm training to attract them and form a taming contract. When she began playing, Ryoma and the slime were captivated by her music. When she finished, he said, how about I make you that doll I promised? She happily replied, of course, I'd love that. Ryoma then used his stone-shattering magic and sculpted a beautiful doll from stone that resembled Aaliyah. She was deeply moved and thanked him. The next day, Ryoma made dolls resembling each member of the Duke's family. When they saw them, they were amazed. The Duke said to Aaliyah, take these figurines with you to school, so you won't feel lonely. She agreed happily, then said to Ryoma, can you make a doll that looks like you? He said, of course, I'll make one for you. Time passed quickly, and work in the laundry was running like clockwork. Ryoma continued visiting the cave, producing large amounts of waterproof cloth. At the same time, he trained with the slimes in combat. When he returned to the laundry, he discovered that sales had tripled because they had secured many cleaning contracts from blacksmiths, miners, and carpenters. He thanked the employees because they were the reason for the increased income. Then he remembered that he hadn't given them any days off, so he said to them, choose. Either we close the laundry one day a week and everyone gets a break, or each of you gets a day off separately. The employees were touched by his words. None of them had ever worked for someone who cared about them, nor had they ever been given time off. At that moment, Celia the cook said, the food is ready. Ryoma smiled and said, you arrived right on time. Starving. The next day, when Ryoma went to the Adventurers Guild, the receptionist informed him that a group called the Seacam Harbor Party had arrived from a distant city, bringing with them a rare type of slime. They tried to sell it to the guild, but the guild refused, which left them deeply frustrated as they were in urgent need of money. Ryoma took the situation seriously and said to her, tell me where they are. Quickly, she told him they were at a tavern, so he headed there immediately. When he arrived and asked about them, he found them in a terrible state. Their money had completely run out. They introduced themselves to him, and he told them that he owned a laundromat. He then asked about the slime they had discovered, and one of them responded, I'm Shin, the leader of the group. Please, ask anything you'd like. Ryoma replied, it's a pleasure to meet you. Show me the slime you brought. If it's truly rare, I'll buy it from you. When they showed him the slime, it was red and resembled blood. Ryoma immediately said, I'll take it. He gave them 2 gold coins. Shin couldn't believe his luck and thanked Ryoma profusely for his generosity. Ryoma then said to him, the frog hunting season is almost here. I advise you to get a permit from the guild and go hunting. I hope to see you at my laundromat. I promise you'll be pleased with the service. After leaving them, Ryoma used space magic and teleported to an abandoned mine where he cast a bonding spell with the slime. The slime accepted the taming immediately, allowing Ryoma to learn its characteristics. It turned out to be a blood-sucking slime. To confirm, he placed the slime near an animal corpse. The slime entered the body and absorbed all the blood inside. Ryoma said to himself, this slime will be incredibly useful in fighting monsters. It will be able to eliminate them and drain their blood. Ryoma then returned to managing his laundromat, which was running exceptionally well. He found time to craft the doll Aaliyah had requested from him, and he also completed all his Adventurers Guild assignments. One day, Aaliyah told him that her father and stepmother would be training tomorrow in monster taming, and she asked him to accompany her. He smiled and said, of course. The next day, Ryoma went with Aaliyah, her father, and her stepmother to the place where the training in taming magic was to be held. There, Elise asked the group, who among you brave ones can tell me what taming magic means? Aaliyah replied, it's when a tamer and a beast form a partnership contract, making the beast submit to the tamer. A bond is then formed between them, allowing them to communicate and act together. Elise said, excellent. Your explanation is spot on. Now, let's move to the next level and learn shared perception magic. She added, this magic allows you to see and feel everything your tamed beast perceives and vice versa, which makes it extremely helpful when facing danger. Reinhardt commented, this type of magic isn't something just any tamer can use. It requires great experience. After that, Elise presented them with 2 bird-like creatures and said, today you will practice shared perception magic with these birds. Indeed, both participants began to communicate with the birds, and the birds agreed to form a bond and be controlled. Elise said, I want you to focus on the bond between you and the birds, to see what they see. As usual, Ryoma succeeded on the first try, and was able to view everything from the birds' perspective. Afterward, they sat down to rest and drink tea. The Duke said said to Ryoma, I thought this kind of magic would be difficult for you, but it seems nothing stands in your way. Elise added, Ryoma still has much to learn. She then told him that she was a tamer, capable of summoning her personal beast, and indeed, within moments, a giant white wolf appeared and sat at her feet. At first, Ryoma thought it was going to attack her and was ready to intervene, but Elise reassured him and said, This wolf is called Laruk Fenrir, and he poses no threat. Ryoma said, I thought Laruk Fenrir beasts were just legends, not real. She answered, They're no myth. They are larger than regular wolves, resemble them in shape, and are skilled in using ice magic. And by the way, I've tamed 20 of them. Ryoma was deeply amazed and said, Taming even one Laruk Fenrir beast is incredibly difficult. Elise continued, Even I have tamed 100 mutant wolves before. Ryoma looked at himself and said, And here I was, proud of raising my slimes. They're nothing compared to the beasts Elise has tamed. The Duke said to him, Elise is a skilled tamer. Despite how hard it is to tame such creatures, she can handle taming many of them at once. Imagine, Ryoma, if your wife was better than you. Elise laughed and said, But don't forget, you're unbeatable with a sword. Then she added, What would you say if you knew that Jamil tames dragons? And the Duke too. He tames four-legged beasts, although he's modest and doesn't brag about it. She continued, By the way, Jamil tames fewer than 20 beasts, but half of them are dragons. When Ryoma asked where they kept all those beasts, Jamil said, We own a large estate where all the beasts are kept. It's guarded by dragons to prevent any escape. Elise said, As for my beasts, they live on a small mountain suited to their size. That mountain contains rare medicinal herbs found nowhere else, which is why the wolves guard it from poachers. Ryoma was astonished by everything he had learned about their beasts. From that day on, he continued training in magic with Elise to further develop his skills without neglecting his business. He produced a large amount of waterproof fabric and sold it to Serge. Then he went to the Adventurers Guild, where Maya told him that the frog hunting season would begin in just 3 days. She said, This is a great opportunity to catch frogs and sell them. It also makes for excellent training. At that moment, one of his companions said, We need the protective mask you wore when cleaning public baths, and also clothing that won't get damaged by lake water. Ryoma told them, Everything you need can be found at Coral Import Company. When you go there, ask for the merchant Serge and tell him I sent you. He'll treat you well. The next day, the Duke and his family were having tea with Ryoma, and Aaliyah was very excited because the day after tomorrow she would go to the lake and use the guitar to catch lemur birds. But when Ryoma remembered that the Duke and his family would leave the city after Elise's hunt was over, he felt sad. The following day, the Duke, his knights, and Ryoma set out toward the lake. Elia looked exhausted from the long journey, her appearance reflecting her fatigue. When Ryoma met the Sakem Harbor adventurers, he stopped to greet them. Then he said to the Duke, You go on ahead to the lake. As they walked, Ryoma spoke with Shin and asked, How's everything going, my friend? Shin replied, I don't even know how to thank you. You bought the slime from us at a great price, and you introduced us to the rare frogs opportunity. We were able to catch a good amount and sell them at an excellent rate. We'll head to your laundromat after this to wash our clothes. We've grown used to it and don't know how we'll manage back in our city. They said their farewells and continued on their way, while Ryoma arrived at the lake. There he saw the beautiful lemur birds. He also saw his fellow adventurers trying to catch frogs before the lemur birds got to them. The Duke said to them, There's an adventurer attempting to tame a lemur bird. The adventurer began playing a flute, but his playing was dreadful. The Duke said, If the bird dislikes the music, it will let out a loud and annoying sound. And that's exactly what happened. The adventurer got angry, drew his sword, and tried to attack the bird, but the lemur retaliated with cutting magic that resembled powerful blasts aimed directly at him. Ryoma immediately stepped in and used earth magic to create a barrier between the adventurer and the lemur. Then one of the birds released an unbearably shrill sound that no one around the lake could endure, except for Ryoma. He managed to identify which bird was causing the sound among the others. Using soundproofing magic, he created a barrier around that bird, and the rest of the birds followed it and flew away from the lake. The Duke asked him, How were you able to withstand that terrible sound? He answered, Did you forget? I can endure pain no matter how intense it is. But at that moment, Elia was deeply saddened because she had failed to tame any of the lemur beasts. Then Rain said, The type we encountered today is known as the nightmare bird. It's extremely rare and only appears once every 10 years. It uses dark magic, which grants it terrifying magical abilities, one of which is the sound you just heard. Ryuma responded, What do you think about searching for this bird's nests? But the guards explained how difficult that would be, as these birds build their nests in remote areas deep within the forest. Later that day, Ryuma stood by the lake with Eliari Eliaria, her father, and the rest of her family. They all remained hopeful that the birds would return. At that moment, Eliaria said, "I still can't believe we're going to part ways, and each of us will go down our own path." Ryuma didn't know how to respond. He remained silent, lost in thought, until he remembered a story he had once read back on Earth. The main character had been in a similar situation and had told the heroine, "We'll definitely meet again." Remembering this, Ryuma turned to Eliaria and said, "Don't worry, we will meet again." Hughes then tried to lighten the mood with a bit of humor, but Eliaria's father didn't seem amused. After all, she was still his daughter. The tense atmosphere soon faded when the lemur birds appeared once more. Eliaria was determined to tame them. She took out her violin and began to play a beautiful melody. The birds emerged from the lake and approached her, and everyone stood in awe as she successfully tamed 9 lemur birds at once. She then cast the control spell, and the birds agreed to form a contract with her, placing them under her command. At that moment, Ryuma used space magic to summon a guitar and began to play a beautiful tune of his own. To everyone's surprise, a nightmare bird appeared, accompanied by a group of lemur birds. Eliaria quickly reminded Ryuma to form the magical contract with them as well. Once he succeeded in taming the birds, the adventurers and Eliaria's family congratulated him. Taming lemur birds was notoriously difficult, but Ryuma's talent had allowed him to control a large number of them. Then Eliaria noticed that one of the birds she had tamed looked slightly different from the others. It turned out to be a rare, evolved subspecies called a spectral lemur bird, capable of using white magic, the most powerful form of magic. When they returned home, a large celebration was held to honor Eliaria for taming her first magical creature. It was also a farewell party for Ryuma, as her family would be leaving the city the following day. Eliaria was deeply saddened by the thought of parting from Ryuma. She told him, "I never really had any friends. All the children around me were always afraid to get close, either because of my family's status or because of my magical powers." She continued, "When I was 5, I was playing with an older boy. At the time, I hadn't yet learned how to control my magic, and I accidentally froze him. My parents stepped in quickly and apologized to his family, and they accepted the apology. But the boy went and told all the other children that I did it on purpose. From that day on, they all feared me. No one ever tried to become my friend again." After she finished her story, she noticed a look of concern on Ryuma's face and asked, "Are you afraid of me too?" He replied, "I could never be afraid of you." She smiled and said, "And I'm not afraid of you either. That's why I want you to have this." She pulled out an elegant box. Inside, Ryuma found a pendant with a deep red ruby. "My mother gave it to me as a gift for my 10th birthday," she said. Ryuma hesitated, "But this pendant is incredibly valuable and rare. I can't accept it." But she insisted, "I want you to keep it until we meet again. Friends give each other gifts when they part ways, so they can remember one another. I want you to remember me through this." Ryuma thought to himself, "Now I'm in a real dilemma. I have to give her something too." He looked around and, having no other options, offered her 2 slimes, one for cleaning and the other that feeds on garbage. "Remember me through them," he said with a soft smile. Eliaria laughed and teased, "All right, I'll think of you every time I see a garbage slime. How romantic." The next morning, everyone gathered to bid Ryuma farewell. They exchanged heartfelt goodbyes and promises. He promised Elise and the Duke that he would write to them regularly to let them know how he was doing. Then Eliaria told him, "Don't forget your promise. We'll meet again in 3 years, and once more in 6 years when I finish my studies. And if you forget, I'll punish you with something you won't be able to handle." She added, "My mother once punished my father for forgetting a promise between them, and I'm exactly like her in every way. So be careful." Ryuma nodded. "Don't worry, I won't forget." Since he still called her Miss, she said, "We're friends now. You should call me by my name, and from now on, I'll just call you Ryuma too. No more formalities." He agreed. "All right, it's a deal." Eliaria smiled, ran toward the carriage, and climbed in. Then she and her family left the city. As the carriage moved away, Eliaria couldn't hide her sorrow. One of the slimes handed her the flute she often played. As if asking her for one last tune, she took it gently and played a slow, sorrowful melody. Her tears flowed freely, and she made no attempt to stop them. Meanwhile, Ryuma decided to check in on his laundry business first, then head to the abandoned mines, where he planned to build a new home. He had made up his mind to leave the inn he had been staying in. He told himself, "I can't waste a single moment. I need to keep learning and improving, just like I promised Eliaria, the Duke, and their family." And with that, the story of our anime comes to an end. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.